Saints Raiders betting guide, betting prediction, however you want to call it. We're talking about it right now. We are reacting to the Action Network's video with their picks and predictions here. So before we get into the video, this is a wild game. A lot of injuries again for the Saints. The Saints are absolutely riddled with injuries, and Vegas comes in with the flu. Not the Vegas flu, the legitimate flu. So Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Derek Carr, they've all been limited in practice this week because of the flu. So how good are they? I'm unsure. Now, I did already take a little slice of this game. So right now the game is sitting at Raiders -1, Raiders -1.5. It was chilling at 2, 2.5. It might not have reached 2.5, but it was chilling at 2 for most of the week until Andy Dalton got named the quarterback moving forward, which moved the line down a little bit. The flu news also kept the line down. Now, I did take a slice of this game. I took a slice of the total. So the total popped at 47.5. I took it at 48, and it moved up towards 50. I think the flu news might have dropped it down again to that 48.5 number. I do like the total. I do think because of the injury issues, I think the Saints offense has been good enough. So I think that the Raiders will find a lot of success, and I think that the points will be plentiful. Now, the flu is bad. If the flu is hanging around, today is Friday. The flu news came out Wednesday. So that's a long time, for the flu to be impacting Sunday. So let's just say that the players are relatively healthy. I think if that's the case, then we'll be fine. Now, as far as the line of this game, I don't think you can bet the Saints. I don't think you can bet the Saints because of the injuries. I understand the spot. I understand getting extra rest. I understand being at home. I understand having, backs against the wall, seasons on the line. But I just don't know if you can back this team with all those injuries. Flip side, if the Raiders were fully healthy, I may be taking the Raiders here because the Raiders actually do have playoff aspirations. The Raiders actually do think they're a good team hidden under a bad record. So the Raiders, their season is actually on the line. I think the Saints know that they're not a playoff team. They're not a true threat. They have Andy Dalton as their quarterback. They're in a rebuilding kind of situation. So I think that the Raiders will come in as that team who it's like, we have to win. We have to win this game. So that's why I would kind of look at the Raiders. As far as player props, they're not up right now, but I would look at Devontae Adams' receptions, or receiving yards and receptions, because he's playing against probably a third, fourth string quarterback. It could be cornerback, excuse me. It could be the exact same thing we saw with the Cardinals, where DeAndre Hopkins went crazy because there was no one guarding him. I would absolutely wait until Sunday to make a play on this game due to the flu issues. I would monitor the Raiders' flu and virus, whatever they say it ends up being. I would monitor that heavily, and I would make sure that you are fully in tune with the Saints injury report. I think everything's pretty much known right now, so no surprises there. No Thomas, no Landry. Dalton's your starter. Kamara's playing. I think Lattimore is still hobbled. Adebo is hobbled. So it's the same cast of characters on the Saints injury report. Action Network, take it away.
The Raiders on the road. All of a sudden, everyone's kind of resurgent on the Raiders. You were on Green Dot Daily with me earlier today. Everyone should watch it. Green Dot Daily noon, Action Network HQ on Twitter, Action Network YouTube, in the Action Network app, setting the agenda daily for sports bettors. We talked about the Raiders in a sneaky way as a future. Why don't you explain to people?
I think the Raiders right now, like I said, they're a good team hidden under a bad record. Look at this beautiful man's eyes on the right here. Look at these beautiful green eyes. But the Raiders have the pieces to be good. Now, will they be good? Hard to say. But it's worth taking a risk on them. For example, like the Jets, right? It's the opposite. The Jets are good record, bad team, I would assume. So I think you should be selling your futures on the Jets and buying futures on the Raiders because more than likely they will get better. Now, that is contingent on Derek Carr playing better. There's contingent on Josh McDaniels proving he can win as a head coach, but that's what they mean by that.
What choice you made on the show?
About giving them out for playoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked at all the different teams and the schedules, and again, it's just you're basing it off grades and math, and it's like take the human element out of it, right? Don't try to look at Las Vegas as a 2-4 team. Just go blank slate and look at them on paper. The 7th most efficient offense. That's a big deal in a year where the scoring's so low. We have a team here that we know can score and produce. And again, you go through it again in one possession games, they're 1-5. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, this man with the beautiful eyes has a good point here, where you do have to remove. I always tell people, like, the last thing you should be looking at is the record, the rankings, like for college, the AP poll, stuff like that. It doesn't matter at all. You know, what you should be looking at is YPP, yards per play. You should be looking at their efficiency levels. You should be looking at their DVOA. You should be looking at the hard math. You know, things happen, just like we're talking about with the Ravens. The Ravens are they should be a 7-1 team, but they're 4-3 or whatever they are now, 5-3. You know, but the math says that they're way better than their record. You know, we saw that with LSU and Ole Miss, where we were touting that to take LSU. You know, the math said that Ole Miss was not the 7th best team in the country. That doesn't mean that LSU is going to beat Ole Miss every time, but you find value in over perception and under perception. I think because of the Raiders' slow start, I think you can get them at some value looking for the future.
We know what happened against the Chiefs. They lost by 1 point, and the Chiefs looked like, again, the top 2 team in the AFC, lost by 1 point. I just looked at that and thought to myself, okay, if the numbers back it up, you're going to find good value on this Vegas team. And there is. Again, you can get a plus 350 at certain books for them to make the playoffs. The 2-4 right now, I get it. It's bad. I said to Chad, they could easily 4-2. Like that game against Arizona, that game against the Chiefs, those could have flipped easily and been towards this Vegas team, which if that had happened, what are we looking at? Minus 150 because the way their schedule is going to end to make the play.
I like that bet. I mean, I'm not going to take it. I don't take a lot of futures. I don't like locking my money up like that. But if you're a futures player and if you're looking for value, yeah, I think this is a great bet. The Raiders to make the playoffs. Now, you know, they're in a tough division, so they're going to have to get a wild card. You know, if you're looking at like a team like the Falcons, they can still win the division. You know, the Raiders are out of that conversation. So the Raiders have to sneak into a wild card. I'd have to dig into some more of those wild card teams. But for that value, plus whatever he said, plus 350, plus 340, you know, if you want to tie your money up for a couple months, I think that's worth a shot.
Playoffs, they should just be way higher. I put it closer to plus 200, plus 175 than I do at plus.
And in my mind, I was thinking it would be in that like plus 160 range somewhere in there before he said the three whatever. So that's a big difference.
300 plus 350. So the Vegas to me about them being a sneaky playoff team, it's more about how easy their schedule is and the fact that the Chargers have major injuries and Denver is just falling apart, right? So in that division, that's really sneaky. And the last play of it is they play the last game of the year against the Chiefs. And to me, again, you never know. The Bills, they're 0-1 in their division right now. So it's going to be interesting how they play in their division going forward.
It's always good, too, to play the Chiefs in the last week of the year because you're assuming the Chiefs are going to rest starters.
Bills, but we all assume the Chiefs will get the 2 seed. So I could easily see them using that final week as a rest week before heading into the playoffs.
The Raiders are 2-point favorites against the Saints in this game. I mean, it's a short home underdog. We've generally backed the Saints before. We believe in their defense. Excellent at getting pressure without blitzing.
So the defense is interesting because that's kind of their past body of work is what they're talking about because they have been terrible in defense the last couple of weeks here because they've been so injured. So it's hard for me to sit here and be like, yeah, the Saints have a great defense because half of the Saints' great defense is sitting on the sidelines holding a clipboard because they're hurt. Half of their great defense is wearing knee braces. You know, their defense is not the same. So I personally don't think the Saints do have a good defense right now. What have they shown me in the last couple of weeks or really this year, that would tell me they have a great defense? So I just don't think they do. That's why I took the over. So I'm interested to see what else he says here because he's talking about that he believes in this defense, whereas I have seen no reason to.
Andy Dalton turned back into the orange pumpkin that we believed he was this past week. And
so Dalton was bad in certain spots, but he wasn't as bad because the first pick six was not his fault, right? The Callaway bobble wasn't his fault. So if he ends that game with one less pick six, I don't think people look at that, look at it as bad as it was. I mean, he wasn't great, but I do think that's a little overinflated as well.
And I don't know. I was all over the Cardinals, loved the Cardinals on Thursday night. You did not. So is your opinion changed for this week? Do you like the Saints as short home dogs?
Yeah, it's changed in the sense that I do think the Lattimore injury has been a big deal to them. Their defense has not really got any stops.
It
He's
sucks.
been out, and
it's
one of these. Maybe I'll wait and see the injury report because they don't have him to cover Devontae Adams. It's over. Like anytime they need a third down.
We talk about cluster injuries here a lot, right? So Lattimore is getting all of the. Let's just pull up the injury report. Okay, so we talk about cluster injuries a lot. We're using VEASAN here. So Lattimore is going to get a lot of the talk, right? So Lattimore is out, okay? So people are going to be like, oh, well, Lattimore is out, so that's really bad for the secondary. What's worse for the secondary, and what needs to be talked about more, is that Lattimore is out, Roby is out, and Adebo is questionable. Okay, so Adebo all of a sudden becomes your third or becomes your first cornerback, but he's questionable. All right, his knee hurts. So let's just say now that he isn't he isn't going to play. Let's just act like he's not available. So Roby's hurt, Williams is hurt, Lattimore's out. So you're looking at, let's say Adebo's hurt. So now you're sitting here saying Alontae Taylor, Bryce Thompson, Chris Harris, if he's on the team, all of a sudden they're covering the 1, 2, and 3. So it's less about Lattimore and more about this cluster injury, this cluster problem. And what I mean by cluster injuries is whenever you have multiple injuries at the same position. As you can see, the Saints have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injuries in the secondary and 4 injuries at cornerback. That's cluster injuries. They have cluster injuries at wide receiver. Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, right? Deontay Hardy. See what I'm saying? So that's the bigger problem. It's not that Lattimore, it's not the Lattimore versus Devontae Adams matchup. It's the fact that Adams, he's not even getting a number 1 cornerback or a number 2. He's getting a banged up number 3 and more than likely getting a number 4. That's the real issue. If he was getting a number 2, it'd be whatever. If it was him versus Bradley Roby, whatever. But the fact that he's getting Alontae Taylor is a huge difference.
They're getting it with him. We've seen the effect with Green Bay. Green Bay looks totally lost. And that's the only piece they lost was Devontae Adams. It's incredible where it's like that important on third down to have a guy you can trust and go to. And then we've seen it with Josh Jacobs these last 3 weeks. He's the best running back in football, which is just bizarre to say, but
yeah, Jacobs has been really, really good for sure.
Contract year for the kid. So everything right now is just rolling on this Vegas team. McDaniels seems like he's got the pulse of this team. We look at the other way with the Saints. That felt like the everything game against the Cardinals. Like, I don't know what they're going to do from this position. They don't even have their own first-round pick this upcoming draft, so they're not going to be tanking for any quarterbacks. Dark days for the Saints right now. So this line stinks. But at the same time, I think you're getting good value. I got this at -3 for Vegas. Again, better offense, more talented defense. I'm just trying not to overrate this Saints team like I have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line does smell like shit, right? Like the line stinks, because I think people, and sometimes it's hard for me because I am so close to the Saints. Like I said, well, as y'all know, I live in New Orleans. I go to the games. I follow the beat writers. I am constantly watching Saints stuff and hearing about, whatever the local news. So to me, it's like, I feel like I see the Saints pretty well for what they are. And I have to remember that for everyone else in the country, they're just a regular team. So how I perceive them is very different than how other people perceive them as far as like knowledge base, So it's sometimes I think too hard with these Saints games where the line is smelly because I think the Saints are really bad or are really bad right now because of injuries and things like that. But maybe they're overvalued generally because it's in the dome. People know the Superdome is a tough place to play. People respect the Saints because they've been good for however many years it's been, 10 years. They've been good and relevant, and maybe this is the first year that they're really on that downslope, and it's kind of catching people by kind of off guard. People are just generally saying like, the Saints can't be that bad. They're playing at home, hard place to play. Yeah, I'll take the 2. Where I'm sitting here going like, how the hell are the Saints going to win this game? Like how the hell are they going to stop Devontae? The only thing is the flu. If it wasn't for the flu, I'd be hammering the Raiders. TBH. I'd be hammering the Raiders because I just don't see how a healthy Raiders team, like this young man with the eyes said, better offense, better defense, better coaching, 2 teams going in opposite directions. Like, why am I not taking the Raiders here? Who's going to stop Devontae Adams? Who's going to stop this Raiders offense? I mean, they're just down. The Saints are just down people. They're playing with a practice squad in NFL games. I mean, that's the truth. So I don't have a ticket on it right now, but if Sunday morning I'm sitting in the dome eating some chicky tenders and I'm sitting there and I'm watching them warm-ups and Devontae Adams is running around and Derek Carr is running around and Josh Jacobs is running around and we get reports that the flu is kind of gone out of the Raiders locker room and that everyone's good to go, I don't know how I don't take the Raiders.
Where I like their identity of running the ball. It doesn't matter if Andy Dalton's going to turn the ball over. Again, 4 interceptions last game. They're not all on him, but some of them are just terrible reads. And that's the problem with Andy Dalton. And I don't know, the Raiders, to me, in this position, anything under a 3 kind of has to be a buy. I don't know if it's going to be.
True. And something else that I think that I kind of forget about, I think now that, and maybe a more experienced Vegas bookmaker could talk to this, but I think as gambling gets more popular, you have to remember that sometimes the numbers are fishy for teasers and fishy for moneyline parlays and things like that. So the Saints are in that teaser sweet spot of where you want to tease through the 3 and through the 7. So maybe it's dangling there for teasers. And I'm not saying that bookmakers put out bad lines as traps. I don't believe that. But I'm saying like maybe that's why it's holding. Maybe that's why the line is sitting and the line isn't doing anything crazy because there's a lot of teaser liability. I don't know, stuff like that I think about where, it makes sense sometimes where like I think about things as straight bets. I think it's things as just, in this case, it's just Raiders -2 and Saints +2. But a book may be looking at it like, well, we have blank amount of teaser liability on the Saints, so we're not getting it off the 2, stuff like that. So that's something else I try and factor into these kind of games. If I had to bet this game every way, I'd take the Raiders. I'd take the over. That's what I would do. I think this is going to look very similar to the Cardinals game. I mean, I think the Raiders are better than the Cardinals. And yes, it was in Arizona on a short week, and this is in New Orleans on extended break. But just the 2 teams, the 2 rosters, I mean, I think Vegas is going to be able to kind of do whatever they want on offense.
Make our contest, but I'll be on it, the -1.5.
Can't disagree with that, young man. Can't disagree with that, young man. Thank you for watching the videos. And as always, even though it doesn't sound like it, who dat?